In this video, I'm going to show you how to build the header, the footer, and a little bit of the homepage for the New York Times using WordPress. In fact, the only tool other than WordPress itself that we're going to need to visually recreate the New York Times on WordPress is Thrive Architect, which is the visual page builder that we'll be using to mock up our page and make it responsive. Let's jump in. Now, I said that in order to design the New York Times, we only needed Thrive Architect, but if your WordPress theme is Thrive Theme Builder, I want you to navigate over into your font settings for your theme and create a new type of typography set. Call it something along the lines of New York Times font and set Crimson Text to be your default font. It's kind of similar to the one that the New York Times uses. This should save us a little bit of time when adding new text elements onto our page by automatically inheriting this font. All right, so the first thing that I want us to concentrate on is working on our header and footer. Perfect, so this is somewhat what we're going after, okay? We're gonna be building our header, which is pretty much identical to that of the New York Times. And then we're gonna try to craft up some of these hero blog posts in a similar fashion to that of what the New York Times is doing. And finally, we'll also touch a little bit on the footer. The footer shouldn't be too complicated. It's just a 6-column layout with a bunch of different content categories listed on it and nothing else too special to remark. Now, to put you into a little bit of context, I've prepared some blog posts in the back end of my WordPress setup. We will need a little bit of content to work throughout this tutorial. So if you have a pretty much blank WordPress installation, what you're going to want to do is just hit pause on this video and create around 10 to 12 blog posts so that we can auto-populate them into the homepage that we're about to create. You don't have to actually fill them up with content, just have them created, okay? All of these blog posts are pretty much empty or filled up with some lorem ipsum text. We don't care too much about the inside content of the blog posts, but we do need a little bit of content published on our site to be able to fill up our homepage with a little bit of content. And the last thing that I think I just need to comment is that when you're in the process of adding in your blog posts, just make sure that you also include a featured image and a custom excerpt. There's going to be some space inside the backend of your post to include a featured image and an excerpt. For example, I forgot to actually fill this one up with some content. Let's just copy and paste this short description in here, because we're going to be using the written excerpt to display a little bit of content on the front of our homepage. With that said, let's just jump right into working with our header, which is going to be probably the trickiest part of them all. All right, so first things first, I'm in the back end of my WordPress website, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a new page. We can call this the New York Times. Let's go ahead and hit publish, and let's fire up the page with Thrive Architect. Now, Thrive is going to prompt us to either start working from a completely blank page, or from a pre-designed template, or from a blank page that contains a header and a footer. I'm going to be working from a blank page that contains a header and a footer. Not to worry, we're going to be creating our headers and footers from scratch. So this is just how I would go about creating this template on an existing WordPress environment. Excellent. So we have a completely blank page with a header that is definitely not the one that we want to use, and a footer which again, it's definitely not the one that we're going after. Let's just concentrate on the header to begin with. I'm going to change my header, and I want to create a new header, which is going to, so here's the thing, we could start from a blank header, or we could technically start off from a pre-designed template. Now, I guess it makes sense to just start from a pre-designed template. Or should we just start from scratch? Let's just go ahead and start from scratch so that you can see the full setup of what a header like the New York Times looks like. So let's just start from a completely blank header. And let's just call this the New York Times. All right. So as you can see, we have something called Thrive Header. It's completely blank, completely empty, and there's a few things that I want to make sure I do right off the bat. The first thing is I'm going to go into my page settings and I want to make sure that I set the content maximum width of this page to be 1400 pixels. Now what this means is that my content, header, page content, and footer is going to stretch out to be 1400 pixels wide. If you stick to 1080 pixels, the New York Times uses so much screen real estate to, be able to present content in a non-clustered way that 1080 pixels is just going to fall too short in terms of the amount of width that you need and the amount of real estate width that you need on your screen. So let's make sure that we set that to be 1400 pixels. And now we go back into our page settings and we make sure that, into our header settings, sorry, and we make sure that we deactivate the option to stretch content to the full width of the screen. We don't want that. We want to make sure that the content stretches out only 1400 pixels wide, which is the width that we just assigned for our current page. And we're going to do the same thing for our footer. Might as well do that. And all right, this probably has some paddings around it, so should be good. 1400 pixels wide. Excellent. That looks about right. Great. And now let's start working on our header. So a couple things here that we should talk about. The New York Times header, if we were to let me just bring it up here real quick. If we were to draw this out, let me just map it out for you. You can probably tell how the New York Times header is simply, I would say, 3 rows of 3 column layouts split up into even spaces. So for example, here we have one column, here we have another column, and here we have another column. This one is justified to the right, this one is aligned to the middle, and this one is left aligned. And the same thing applies to this section, right? We've got one more column here, a bigger column for our logo, and another column for this financial widget. And then we have simply a menu that is made up of content categories. So we've got blog posts that deal with world news, one about US news, one about politics. Then we've got 2 simple dividers here and some text here with some trending news. So it's a pretty straightforward header. It might seem a little bit, complicated to grasp at first, how am I going to fit so much content, so much stuff into my header? But if you think about it in terms of columns, it makes it just makes it easier for our brains to understand, okay, how do I organize things into such a narrow space? So we're going to be using columns. And then in terms of mobile, let's just quickly take a look at how this looks like on mobile devices. On mobile, the header just completely disappears, it vanishes, and we have a pretty straightforward header that is made up of simply a sandwich menu, a logo, and an account icon. And here we have another content box with some today's date left aligned, and a call to action to subscribe to the premium membership right aligned. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's going to be super easy to build using Thrive Architect. All right, let's go back to Thrive Architect and let's just start wrapping, doing some magic here. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 2 content boxes. One content box there and one content box here. Tony, why do you need 2 content boxes? Well, one of my content boxes is going to serve as my mobile header. I'm going to bold this. And then my other content box is going to be the header where I'm going to be building my desktop header. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely hide this content box on desktop, and I'm going to completely hide this content box on mobile devices. So this is pretty much what I like to call wireframing my page, right? Before I even start worrying about the designs, the aesthetics, I'm just creating my content boxes and making sure that I have what I need to have on mobile and desktop. And now I can start working on this. So what did we say we needed? We needed 3 column layouts. And I do know that the center column, there's a flag here, the center column needs to be a little bit bigger than my left and right columns. And it's going to be the same thing for my second row of 3 column layouts, right? Here we're gonna have our logo, here we're gonna have our languages, and so forth and so on. And now we can just start building this. So what do we need? We need another set of 2 column layouts. One's going to be for our sandwich menu and one's going to be for our magnifying glass, our search bar. Now I'm going to do some magic here. Rather than just sticking 2 column layouts inside my left column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a content box. Why am I doing this? I am doing this because if I were to just stick a set of 2 column layouts, it's going to be very hard for me to tell Thrive Architect, hey, I want you to make sure that these 2 columns don't go over a specific width. And you're going to see why I'm doing that in a second. So this is the current layout, right? We can take a look at the breadcrumbs. We've got a 3 column layout, and inside my left-hand column, I've got a content box, and inside that content box, I've got a 2 column layout. And now I just need a menu here in the left-hand column. And let's just make it a standard menu. We're going to use a WordPress menu, and let's just make that the categories menu. I think I did forget to mention that. I did also create a menu. So I told you that I had created a lot of blog posts already. I have also created a bunch of different blog post categories as well. As you can see, most of them are actually empty. There's a few of them, I've got some business articles and stuff. And then what I did is I went into appearance, menus, and I created a menu called categories where I simply filled up that menu with all of my different categories. And this is the menu that I'm going to use to eventually create this menu right here. So that is something that I did to prep for this video. Now this obviously doesn't look like we wanted it to look. Instead of a horizontal type of menu, we want to make sure that we toggle the hamburger menu. And that is a little bit too big. Let's just make this probably 12. And now we need a search bar. Let's do a search bar. Stick it here. And we probably want a 2-step search bar. Why 2-step? Because the New York Times here is doing a 2-step search bar where you simply have a magnifying glass, and upon clicking on it, the search bar actually shows up. So let's just we can probably do search 17 expand. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that's much better. Perfect. And let's keep it to 12, but we probably want to make it black. Great. And let's just make this black as well. And we probably want to left align the text. Excellent. Great. I want to make sure that I left align my search bar, and I probably want to make sure that I also keep things left as left aligned as I possibly can. And this is when my content box is going to come in handy. Now, this search input field is actually annoying me a little bit right now. So we can come into the settings here and just tell Thrive Architect, hey, I don't want to see the expanded search in the editor. And this is going to allow us to work in a more efficient way right within the editor. Great. Probably want to make this still a little bit smaller. Actually, it's probably the magnifying glass. Yeah, this is the one that I want to make smaller. Perfect. That looks more like it. And I probably just don't want as much padding as I have right now. Like 5. Yeah, let's leave it like that, and maybe like no padding on the sides may come in handy. Great. And same here, no paddings, no margins. Getting rid of the side paddings just so that I can make sure that I can bring this over to the left hand and stick it to the sandwich icon as much as I possibly can. Let me just hit save real quick. Good habit to save your work every now and then. Great. Now what I'm going to do, and this is why I mentioned that it's important that we drop a content box before dropping in those columns. I can just navigate over to my content box, the one that holds that 2-column layout, and just give it a maximum width. And this is going to bring in my search bar and my sandwich menu a whole lot closer. Now I can tell that this is still not completely aligned with one another. And let's just try to figure out why. Well, first things first, this has a lot of unnecessary padding. And now let's just go inside each column. Yeah, there you go. And make sure that we justify to the center all of my content. And we probably won't need all of this margin and padding either for this content box. Perfect. This is great, looking good. All right, custom menu. I want to make sure that I line this to the left. And let's just make sure that for this column, we don't make it this wide. Great. Starting to look much, much better. And there's probably still enough breathing room for us to bring the maximum width of this even more. Great. I'm liking this. All right, perfect. Let's keep going. Now, let's just insert in the middle column some text. Now, what we're going after is we need a set of versions, right? This actually isn't the language, but rather the current New York Times version that you're reading. So there's a New York Times version for the US, one for international, one for Canada, and one in Spanish. I'm just going to go ahead and use text to actually build this. So US, I'm going to insert 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to do international, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's Canada, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Spanish, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I have to grab these icons here. Let's just copy and paste. There you go. Perfect. We can just center align this, and that would be awesome. Let's get rid of all of this line spacing and make sure we center the content of these columns. Let's do the same for this one. Great. And this column probably has some padding. No. All right. No. Yeah, we should be good. All right. And next up is our buttons. We need 2 call to actions. 1 call to action to subscribe for 50 cents a week, and 1 call to action to log in. So, all right, let's do that. Inside this column, we're going to do, again, we're going to use a content box just so that we can control how wide these columns are going to stretch out. And let's do a set of 2 columns. 2 columns. Now, I'm going to right away get rid of all of this padding that the content box is inserting for me, as I'm not going to need it. And I will want a button. Great. And this button is going to say subscribe for 50 cents per week. Great. Let's get rid of the letter spacing. Let's make it bold. And let's just make this like 12. We will need, I can tell that we will probably need a little bit of more space. Let's just grab the color for this button. And let's give it a nice background color. It's actually probably that one. Yeah, it's that one. And the hex code is this one, in case you're wondering. 567B95. Let's duplicate this button, let's put it here, and let's do login. Excellent. Great. And what we can do is, for this column, since we don't need this to be that wide, let's just make this column thinner. Right, and now I have plenty of space here for both buttons. And what's even better, let's just comment to each individual button. And let's make the padding, actually, let's get rid of these margins. And let's make the padding, instead of 18, let's just make it 8. Great. Let's do the same for this button. No top and bottom margins. And let's make the top padding 8 and the bottom padding 8. And let's make sure we center align these columns. Excellent. And I did see that there was some margin and padding here. Great. Awesome. Probably want to come into my desktop content box and just get rid of some margins as well as some paddings. Probably don't need any of those things. And now it's just a question. So I can tell that there's still a lot of space that goes from, let me just draw this out for you. You see how there's all of this space between the content of my top row and the actual edge of the screen. I want to identify where that breathing room is coming from, because if we take a look at what the New York Times is doing, it doesn't have, let's ignore this ad space that doesn't even have any ads, but can you tell how there's barely any space in between the buttons and the actual edge of the screen? So that's what we want to try to do. So the only way of actually figuring out where that space is coming from is going one by one and just making sure that none of these columns, see here, these columns have some margin and some padding. Let's just get rid of all of that and make sure that none of these things have, see, one more here. Okay, we're getting there. And let's just see if the sandwich menu, that's probably fine. 20 pixels, there you go. Get rid of that. Let's actually leave 5. And let's make this 0. Okay, so that brought, that may have been a little bit too much actually. All right, let's make it 10, should be good. And now we want to make sure that we're centering everything. Center, columns, and why is this? I see what's happening. So since we are giving the sandwich menu 10 pixels of top margin, we don't want to do that because we're not doing the same thing for the search icon, which means that my top menu is going to be 10 pixels underneath my search icon because the search icon doesn't have to pick 10 pixels of top margin. Okay, well, this is already getting pretty close. We could try to figure out where the remaining space is coming from. Probably maybe from here. Oh, the buttons. The buttons. Of course it had to be the buttons. Great, and now let's just grab my entire content box for desktop and let's give it maybe like 5 pixels. And maybe like 10. Okay, 10 looks good. All right, now we're on to the second row of 3 column layouts. Again, we're gonna need some text for our date, a logo, and then we just need, so for the financial widget, the one that pulls in data about the current markets, there are a gazillion different plugins that will do this for you. I don't have any of them installed. I'm just gonna use some placeholder text, but you can look for JavaScript snippets that you can just embed on your landing page using HTML, or you can look for a financial markets plugin on the, inside the WordPress marketplace. There's a lot of them that you can use, some good ones. The good ones without branding, you'll probably have to pay for it, but for the sake of this tutorial, just know that, either you simply drag a text widget and insert the shortcode that any of these plugins will give you, or you can insert an HTML widget and drag it into the right-hand column and just insert the HTML snippet that, there are some websites that will actually do this for you as well. It will just provide you with an HTML snippet that magically pulls in the data from wherever they're storing it. So, hey, Thrive Architect is telling us that it's a good time for us to save our work, so let's do that. Excellent, so let's just go ahead and do that. I'm gonna insert some text on the left-hand side of my screen, and we just need today's date followed by a simple text element that reads today's paper. So that's going to be fairly easy. I can actually just do this dynamically. I have my text highlighted, and I can just come into my dynamic options and do time and date. And here we're going to have a wide range of design options that we can pick from. Let's just go with the first one, August 14th, 2029. All right, it's actually July 19th. And let me bring down the spacing for this text element. Let's insert a new one underneath. And let's just do today's paper. Today's paper. Now, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. I see what's happening. So, okay, when websites do this. All right, so as you can probably see, the font that I told you guys to set as the default font for your theme comes real in handy when we're working with the content on our page. But for some reason, the New York Times is not using that font on their header. So, and we can probably just power through with it as it is right now. One thing that I'm noticing is that this text at the top can probably be smaller. Let's make it 12, and let's actually bold it. That's much better. And here, let's just get rid of this line spacing. And if I'm not mistaken, the top date, the top text, which is the date, is bolded. So let's just go ahead and bold that. Great. And now, one thing that I like doing is just come into your columns and make sure that everything is vertically aligned to the center, right? We want to make sure that all of our columns are sitting at the same level and not have our logo in the middle, text elements on the left-hand column sitting at the top, and the remainder text on the right-hand column sitting at the bottom. Like, we want to make sure everything is nicely leveled across each column. Now we just need to insert our logo, which I have saved somewhere here. Great. There's probably enough room for us to make this bigger. Excellent. And let's just make sure that we center the image. Great. Hey, looking pretty good. Awesome. And now we just need another text element. Again, just going to do a placeholder. And I'm going to leave you with the intricacies of figuring out which financial plugin you want to use. I'm just going to be like S&P 500, emoji, arrow. Let's just do feeling bullish. So let's just say that it's up 1 point. And we can probably make the point green just for the sake of having it look nice and cute. All right, and let's just bold that. Nice. Nice. Okay, I'm liking this. All right, this is looking pretty good. Quite happy so far with this. Let's just make sure that we don't have any see? Top margin, bottom margin. Let's just get rid of all of these paddings. I'm doing this mainly because that's the way the New York Times does it. There's barely any breathing room in between my first row of 3 columns and my second row of 3 columns. All right. Maybe 5 pixels of top margin. And this can probably be bold as well. All right, perfect. I think this is good. All right, now we need a divider. All right, let's insert a divider. And we're gonna put it underneath those columns. Let's make it 1 pixel. And we're gonna bring down the opacity to 30. All right, we don't need to touch the default color, just make it 30. And that gives it this, this feeling of being a subtle gray. What I probably don't want is the divider to be so far apart from the second row of 3 columns. Let's just power through with it as it is right now and see where we go with it. Okay, I was going to do a mistake. I was going to insert a text widget, but remember how I said that I had created a menu with all of my content categories in it? This is going to be a good time for us to use it. We're going to look for a menu, custom menu, and just drop it underneath my divider. Again, we're just going to pick out a very simple one. Standard drop-down menu. And we're going to pick our categories menu. Let's just go ahead and use the basic one. Great. Couple of things. First things first. Yeah, I'm mentally debating whether it would be, yeah, it's probably going to be better. It's probably just better to go ahead and use Arial, mainly because that's the way the New York Times does it. For some reason, they just like using different font styles. So let's go with website fonts for our menu, and let's do Arial. And the same thing for this one. Let's do, instead of crimson text, website font, and let's do Arial. I'm not doing anything weird. I'm just changing the font style of the text elements that I was using inside our header. But don't worry, because we will be using crimson text for the actual body content of our page. Okay, this needs to be definitely like 14 pixels big. And if this one's 14, today's paper probably needs to be 12. Awesome. All right, this actually looks a whole lot more like the, like the New York Times. This is 12 pixels. Let me just make sure. Yeah, this is 12 pixels. I want to make sure I'm consistent with font sizes when I can. All right, and since this is, I believe, Arial already by default, the font style in my menu, just go and do typography. Yeah, this is Arial. I think I just want to make sure I make them smaller. So instead of 16 pixels, let's go with 12. And is that too small? No, it's probably about right. Let's just... So I think the New York Times actually has even more categories than I do. I think I kind of want to just leave it like that. What I want to do is, remember the divider that we just inserted? Let's just bring down the space between the menu underneath it and the 3-column layout above it. There's probably, there's 20 pixels of internal padding right now. Let's just go ahead with 2. We're going to bring it down to 2. And see how that squashes down the distance between the logo and the actual divider? I'm not sure if I can zoom in. Oh yeah, I can. There's barely, in fact, it's actually touching. That's fun. Let's make it 4 then. Okay, that's better. Excellent. And now what I want to do is I want to clone that divider. I'm going to bring it down underneath the custom menu. And I'm going to do that twice. I'm going to clone it again. Scratch that. Let's delete it. I'm not going to clone it again, mainly because I think I need to make it darker. Yeah, this one needs to be pretty much black. And once we make it black, now we're ready to clone it again. That way we don't have to switch the color of it twice. Excellent. Now for this divider, I do believe that I do want to make it 1 pixel. I mean, like 2 pixels only, the padding. Because these two are very much touching each other. Great. Awesome. Guys, we're getting very, very close. There's one thing annoying me, which is that the distance between each menu item in the New York Times is much, much smaller than ours. But if we make it smaller, if we come into custom menu spacing in between the items and we make it like half, then we have too much space on the sides. The solution would be to just add in more, categories like they are doing. But anyways, yeah, this should be fine. And let's just make sure that there isn't too much space here. Let's just bring the top margin of the custom menu to 5 pixels and the same thing for the bottom one. I am pretty sure that we're almost done. We just need to work on this section and we should be good. All right, so instead of desktop header, we're going to say live. And let's just make sure that we change this to Arial. So it's going to be Arial. Oh, sorry, not a Google font, website font. Arial, Helvetica. Perfect. Let's add 1 pixel of letter spacing. 1 or 2. Let's actually go with 2. And let's make it red. Live. And let's do extreme heat. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. Extreme heat. And here for this string of text, I don't want letter spacing. I don't want this to be red. And yeah, I just need everything to be much smaller. Oops, not sure what I did there. Okay. Let's just make this 12. Extreme heat, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do Jan 6 investigation. All right, perfect. We can probably bring down the line spacing underneath it. And guys, we are pretty much close to being done, at least with the desktop version. Let's just hit save and see what we got going on. All right, so this is our version, and this is the New York Times version. Let me just close that down. Hey, looking pretty good. I would say that the space in between these two dividers is even smaller. So let's make sure that we bring down the padding there. I think the bottom one, I didn't actually get rid of the padding. Yeah, let's just do 1 and 1. That's much better. Perfect. And now I just want to take a minute to work on the mobile header, right? There's absolutely no way we can make this header fully mobile responsive as it is right now. It's impossible. I mean, we would probably be pulling our hairs out for days and days. It's just much easier to come into responsive mode, show hidden elements, and work on a much more mobile-friendly header. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, pretty easy. Let's just, again, quickly take a look at what the mobile header looks like for the New York Times on mobile. Sandwich menu, icon, sandwich menu, logo, account icon. That's probably as far as we're going to go in terms of mobile. We could add maybe like a background section underneath it. Well, let's take it from there and see what happens. So here what we're going to do is we're going to add in probably just duplicate that custom menu. Let me not get ahead of myself here. Actually, let me process what I'm about to do. So mobile header, let's jump in a 3-column layout. And I don't actually need my 3 columns inside a content box for my mobile menu because I don't mind it if it stretches out to the full width of the screen, right? It is going to be stretching out to the full width of the screen on mobile, so that should be fine. There's no issue there. I accidentally duplicated these columns, which I didn't want to do. I just wanted to duplicate. I'll just do it from scratch here real quick. Menu. Let me drag it onto the left-hand column. Perfect. We're going to do a simple one. Use our category menu. And we're going to put it into the left-hand column. Let's make sure that we toggle our hamburger menu. Make it... I was going to say let's make it smaller. Let's make it like, what, 12? 14? 14 is probably fine. For a mobile device, 14, 18? Yeah, let's go with 18. And now the cool thing about our hamburger menu is that with Thrive Architect, we can actually customize the content inside it. Let's edit the design, open it up, and here we can bring in all of these elements from the desktop header that we were simply never going to be able to fit into a mobile screen. We can actually just throw them in here. For example, let's go ahead and insert a search bar. Could probably just do above the menu. Let's insert a search bar. Probably just need this to be a one-step search bar. Simple search bar. Let's just do a very simple one. Great. Let's just align it to the center, and that should be fairly good. Let's do this automatic width, and you can just, I don't know, maybe you want some social icons here at the bottom, or maybe like a logo or something. I'll leave you to customizing the actual content of your menu. Just know that you can fully customize it however you want. Now let's bring over this logo, duplicate it, and just drag it into the center column. And here we just need an icon, and it's going to be an account icon. So maybe like, I don't know, let's just go with that one. But probably not the best one, actually. Let's go with maybe like account. Let's go with that one. That one looks pretty neat. Perfect. Let's make it 18. Yeah, it's gonna be too small, like 32. All right, that's better. And let's align it to the right of our screen. Perfect. And let's just quickly see what this looks like right now. And I'm not gonna untoggle the setting that allows me to see hidden elements, mainly because I want you to see what the desktop header would look like on mobile. I mean, look at that. That would just be very, 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 very hard for us to try to optimize for mobile, to try to make it responsive. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's much easier for us to just tell Thrive Architect, hey, see these 3 columns? Don't wrap them. We're gonna do don't wrap these columns. Center them to be, vertically aligned to the middle. Let's go ahead and actually get rid of all of these paddings and margins. Perfect. We probably want our logo to be bigger if possible, but if we want to have our logo, okay, so let me do this. Let me actually hide the desktop one. Great. And let's bring up the mobile content box. I'm gonna leave the left and right paddings mainly because I want to make sure that my sandwich icon and my account icon never actually touch the edge of the screen. I want to make sure they have a little bit of, at least 20 pixels of breathing room in between the edge of the screen and the icons themselves. This looks fine. I mean, we could make this column again, instead of 25, let's make it 15. And let's do the same with this one. Instead of 25, let's make it 15. And that's going to make our logo bigger because we're allocating more real estate screen to the middle column. This looks pretty cool if you ask me. I mean, it's very much almost identical, right? Perfect. So now that we have a header that is going to work for us on desktop, and now that we have a header that is also going to work for us on mobile, I want to just go ahead and come up with a little bit of a footer that makes more sense for the New York Times. Let's go ahead and make this white, and we can probably just work off of this template. Actually, let's make this background style white, and let's change our logo to be the New York Times. Great. And let's just take a look at what the footer looks like for the New York Times. So here's what we have. Let me pull up my pencil here real quick. We have 2 dividers right here. And then we have our logo and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. And 1 row of disclaimer text. Not bad. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to make these columns exactly the same just for the sake of saving ourselves a little bit of time, because the only difference is that here in between some text elements you do have a divider, but that's no big deal. I think I've already shown you guys how to insert dividers. Let's just try to speed through the footer as much as we possibly can. All right, let's get rid of all of this. We don't need this social icons. And we want to make sure that all of this text is actually black because I can't see a thing. All right, and there's probably another text element here. Great, let's make it black. Awesome, perfecto. I'm liking this. Now, I'm going to teach you guys how to do something. First things first, let me actually do one thing. I'm going to drop in a background section in between my header and my footer, just because I want to be able to see where my footer starts. Again, we're just wireframing here. Let's give it some background color. Great, so this is where my footer starts. I have my header, the body of my page, and my footer. My footer, which is going to consist of 2 dividers. Let's drop them in there. Dividers. Above columns. 1 divider. Let's make it 1 pixel wide. And let's just make the opacity 30. And bring this to be 2 pixels of top and bottom pattern. Let's duplicate that. And now we would already have our dividers in there, which is great. That's what we wanted. Okay, now let me think about what the easiest way of doing this is. Given that I'm going to have a logo and then 6 columns, in order to make my life easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I get those 6 columns created, and then I'm going to put the content of one of those columns inside a content box. That way I can just duplicate that content box and drag it inside each of those remaining columns. And that way I don't have to actually be creating each column by scratch. You know, this is an easy way of just saving yourself a little bit of time. So I can tell that this logo should be above the columns. There you go. And let's just give it 10 pixels of top margin to add in a little bit of breathing room in between the dividers and the logo. Excellent. And now I am thinking, I'm going to drag this text over into the left-hand column. Not before, actually, I've already done it, but let's insert a content box, as we just said, inside the column. And I'm going to drag the content of my column inside the content box. Let's get rid of all these paddings and margins. Excellent. And now, this is a custom menu, which means that technically speaking, we can probably pull in the content of our category menus. I'm not sure that I want to do that. Maybe because our category menu is super long. Let's give it a try and see what happens. Right now, let's just leave it as it is. It's going to be too long. Yeah. I'm thinking as it is, it's probably good enough. You just get rid of this letter spacing, company, and let's just duplicate this. Bring it into the next column, duplicate the content box, bring it into the next column. Let's get rid of some of this stuff that's in here. Custom menu, let's get rid of this menu, and let's just get rid of this text, and let's get rid of the whole column actually. Great. And now I can clone this content box, bring it to the, let's just do the, okay, let's just actually drag it to the left. All right, that's good. And for some reason, I can't seem to find the spot to drag it to the right, so I'm just gonna put them on the left. And that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need one more. One more column, put it on the left. Wait. It's funny, I don't really know why I can't seem to put it on the right, so let's just keep on putting them on the left. Okay, this leaves us with 6 columns. We need one more divider. Let's put it underneath our set of columns. Excellent. Now we do probably want to add in a little bit of more space in here. Let's do 10 and 10. Excellent. And probably more space actually. Let's do like 25 pixels. And now we just need some text underneath our divider. This is going to serve as our disclaimer text. I don't know if I'm going to be able to copy all of these text items. I'm wondering. Paste. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. Huh, funny. It seems like the New York Times is actually using a vertical menu, which is somehow being displayed horizontally. Interesting. Okay, that didn't work, so we're going to have to probably just Actually, let's do that. Since they're using a menu, let's do the same thing. Let's use our custom menu. And let's bring in our list of categories. Now I'm gonna have to squash it down a lot because otherwise it's just not gonna fit. I have too many categories. Let's just assume that this is not a list of categories, but rather some disclaimer text. Right off the bat, let's get rid of some of these paddings and margins. I can't read any of this text. Let's make it black. Let's make it 12. All right, it's not too bad. Probably make it like 10 actually. Yeah, don't do. Not sure if I want to bring this down a tad bit. All right, not bad. We may want to add in actually some top margin just so that the spacing between the divider and the columns is the same as the menu and the divider itself. All right, guys, and we have a header and footer working. And this is, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but this is looking pretty close to what the New York Times has going on. See if I can open this up for you so that you can get a better view of what this is looking like. Let me add in background section here again. Background section. Let's just make this a little taller. And now let's close this down. Hey, pretty cool stuff. I'm actually kind of really liking this. Probably want to make these menu items bigger. But I am kind of proud of what we're doing here. Okay, so when it comes down to the structure of the homepage, Arno, can you bring up the current homepage for the New York Times, please? Can you tell how it's simply a 2-column layout with a bunch of different blog posts being displayed on either the left-hand column or the right-hand column? Our job is to insert these blog posts, filter them in an appropriate way so that WordPress understands which posts it needs to display in which places and, just style them as if this were the New York Times. Let's just do that. Now, for this background section, I want to make sure I get rid of the minimum height. I don't need a minimum height. And we just need to start inserting some content. So we have a background section. I'm wondering whether I need a content box. Probably not, mainly because this background section is indeed inheriting the width from our landing page. That is 1400 pixels wide. You can see these little arrows here. These are telling us, hey, your content is only going to stretch out to this, to this width of the screen, which in this case, it's 1400 pixels. I probably don't need a content box. I just need my 2-column layout, because I'm not going to be telling Thrive Architect, hey, make sure that you squash my columns in any way, shape, or form. Now, my left-hand column does need to be a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my left-hand column be 2/3 of that width, and my right-hand column is going to be 1/3 of that width. Awesome. Do I need some extra space in between this section and my content? Probably. Let's just power through it with it. Let's just power through it as it is right now. Great, so let's just go ahead and start putting in some content on our page. We're gonna drag in a post list, and we're gonna put it inside the left-hand column. And we can probably just do, what do we want? Let's just go with, wondering if there's one that fits our design better. Actually, I think I just want text for now. Pretty sure I can power through it with just text only. Let's just insert text only for now. Now, I do want to add a feature section. See how our post list element has the possibility of enabling a featured content piece? Let's activate that option. And let's insert a featured content piece. Now for this one, I do want to make sure I show an image. And not just that, but the New York Times, they changed this around but I have seen this on more than one occasion where the featured content piece will have the featured thumbnail on the right hand side. So let's do that. Let's pick out a template that makes use of the featured image on the right hand side. So for example, I don't know, maybe this one or that one. This one seems to be a little bit more squared. So let's go with that one. Excellent. And I did steal this, borrow this piece of content from the New York Times for the purpose of recording this tutorial. So I want to, now is, this is the right time for us to make sure that we tell WordPress, hey, how do I make sure that I feature at the very front of my newspaper whatever blog post I want to make sure gets featured? And this is where tags come into play. So let's go ahead and tell WordPress, hey, I want to make sure that you filter the post that gets shown here in the featured post section to include only posts, only posts that are tagged as front. Save. And boom, here it is. We have our featured post with Donald Trump's picture, which you can't see. We're going to fix that in a second. But okay, so how did that happen? Well, let me jump back into the backend of WordPress and show you the list of blog posts that I have created. Here, if I look for the one about Trump, I think it's this one. Trump says he's a target in special, so forth and so on. Can you see how I have tags? I have a column dedicated for tags. And one of them is front. And this is how I internally organize which content pieces are going to be featured, in what places of my homepage. In this case, I only have one blog post tagged as front. And by default, if there's only one of them, well, that's the one that WordPress is going to pick. Now, what happens if you, as you create more and more and more content pieces, you don't want to have to go, you don't want to have to be going back and getting rid of those tags from those content pieces that were featured on the front page of your newspaper every time that you want to add a new one. That would just be very time consuming. By default, WordPress is just going to show the most recent one. So, if I were to create a new article today and tag it as front, that would be the one that gets featured that day. So that's pretty convenient for us. Now, the reason why Donald Trump is not showing here is because the featured image that I've selected for him is just not a very good image. Let me actually show you the picture here real quick. If I go into the backend of that blog post, feature image, you see how Donald Trump himself is not in the center of that image? The background image the background for the content box that we're using for that image is showing the center of that image. It's cropping it, since this image is not technically a square, Thrive Architect is cropping it so that the center of the image shows up. We can actually change this. It's not a content box. It's actually, we're just simply using the background image for this right-hand column. Let's go into background style. Let me actually post list, edit the design of this featured content piece. Inside this column, width, not sure what's going on here. There you go. Okay, background style. See how it's pulling in the featured image and it's cropping it so that the center of the image shows up. I can actually make it have the right hand side of the image show up. And in this case, now Donald Trump's face shows up. So that's pretty convenient. We can actually tweak those things. Ideally, just pick an image where the main, key thing to the image is in the center. That will probably make things easier for you in the long run. Awesome. Great. So now we have our main content piece at the very front cover of our newspaper. Now, there's a few things that I want to do here. For example, I want to make sure that I display the date. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's edit the design of the featured post. And instead of saying featured post, let's actually display the date. We've already done this in our header. Let's just go to time and date and pick out the day. Insert. And this is obviously going to be the day in which the blog post was published. And, if this is the content piece that you're showing on the front cover of your newspaper, it's probably just going to be today's date. We may not need the amount of comments. The New York Times doesn't do that. But we may want, what is this? This is a content box that we don't need. But we may want something else. For example, we may want, let's just make this black. Perfect. What could we possibly want? That's a great question. What the New York Times is doing is just inserting the word live. So we may want just to do the word live. Let's just put this text here and drag in some text. Now this is not going to be dynamic. This is just the word live is going to be showing up here. Let's make it red. And this is all, something that's just going to be permanently there. Just drag this over here, live, 19th July. Awesome. Cool stuff. Now, instead of read more, let's do see more updates. We can change this to be see more updates. Perfect. And I don't think we need that shadow that there's a little bit of like a drop shadow coming in from somewhere. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Featured content list. Is there a shadow? I think there is. Or is it just my eyes? Could be my eyes. I don't see a shadow anywhere, so it could be very well my eyes. Edit design. Just make sure. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any shadows. Oh, there it is. Article, shadow. Okay, there you go. Perfect. We don't have any shadows there. Donald Trump's face is showing up. Oh, and important. You see how I told you earlier, hey, it's important that you add in a custom excerpt. This little piece of text that's showing up here is the custom excerpt. I'll just show you how this is where this is coming from. Again, let me edit the design of this featured content piece. And here you see how we've got some text. I'm just telling Thrive Architect, hey, make sure you fill it up with the excerpt. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I'm going to go even further. I'm going to show you how to use advanced custom fields because you may want something that's a little bit more specific than just the excerpt. So there's a plugin, and I've talked about this plugin in videos in the past. It's called Advanced Custom Fields. Let me actually help you look for it. So go to Plugins, Add New, and we're going to look for Advanced Custom Fields. Excellent. And as you can see, it's this one. It's already active on my website. Just make sure that you install it and activate it on your website. It's 100% free. And it's gonna create this ACF toolbar call to action in there for you. Go into field groups and create a new type of field group. Give it a name. So maybe just give it like short description, or maybe like post short description, and give it a field label. So this is short description for front cover, something like that, something that just helps you understand what this field is for. And instead of a text field, make it a text area. You can use this, advanced custom fields for a lot of different things that I'm not going to go deep into the, in this video, but instead of making it a text field, make it a text area, which is going to allow you to add in more than just a simple string of text. And here, just make sure that the default setting for display this advanced custom field on every post is created. Okay, so post type is equal to post. When you're currently editing a post type that is equal to post, it could be a page, it could be a Thrive symbol, it could be something else. Just make sure that this is set to post and hit save and create it. I'm not going to hit save because I've already created one for myself. And now what you can do is, what this is going to do is it's going to create a new field that you can fill up with text on your blog posts. So for example, I think Nelson Mandela goes from hero to scapegoat. I'm not sure if this has a custom excerpt. It doesn't look like it has. So, but here it is. If you navigate to the, downwards to the bottom of your post, you're going to see how this advanced custom field is now showing up. You've got a short description, and you can just type in a short description for your post. Hit save. And now inside Thrive Architect, instead of telling Thrive Architect, hey, don't show the excerpt, instead, drag in some text, and we're going to use dynamic text, pull in dynamic text from custom fields, and fill it up with my short description. I don't know if this particular post has actually short description or not. So you've got two ways of doing it, right? You've got the, being able to use custom fields or being able to use your post excerpt. The post excerpt just works right off the bat. Advanced custom fields is going to be more useful in the long run, but it adds a little bit of those extra steps in between. Anyway, something else that you can learn there. Great, so now that we have our featured section at the top, we could spend a little bit more time tweaking the design. Maybe just make this even bolder. Make this bold. Probably even bolder. I'm not sure if Crimson Text actually lets me do. I would have to go back to my theme settings for my fonts and see if I can make this even bolder, but let's just leave it as it is for now. Maybe make this a little bit bigger. That's better. Okay, great. So now we have a featured content piece and we have a post list right underneath it. According to the New York Times, we only want 2 more content pieces in my hero section, right? I'm taking this section as if it were my hero section, and there's only our feature content piece, which we've already taken care of, and 1 more content piece underneath, 2 more content pieces underneath it. So let's do that. Let's just tell Thrive Architect, hey Thrive, I don't want 3 columns. I just want 1 more column. And now that I'm thinking about it, so you see how the New York Times just doesn't, I don't know why they do this every now and then, but there's this empty space here that they could be using for something more useful. So instead of stacking up 2 articles here, why don't we just stack 2 of them underneath this? Use 2 columns, but don't pull in 6 articles. I just want you to pull in 2 articles. Great. And isn't this just a better way of making use of space? I feel like it is. But anyways, here what we're going to want to do is make sure that we edit the design. We want to add in some text. And here I'm just going to drag in post content. And I want my post content to be the excerpt. Again, let's just make the text a little bit bigger. I'm not sure if 14 is too small. Maybe like 16, is 16 too big? No, let's actually make it 16. Yeah, it's much more readable, and let's bold this. No, not that one. Let's bold the text above it. Yeah, that's much better. Much, much better. Let's just come into the featured post and make this 116 as well. Great. This is looking kind of really slick. If you ask me, this is probably already even more elegant than the New York Times, because we're making use of more space than they are. And it's not super clustered either. Like, we're taking advantage of our real estate screen while keeping things nice, clean, minimal, and subtle. I'm happy. There's one thing that we could use advanced custom fields for now that we're at it, which is to add in the reading time. So reading time, it's essentially calculated by the amount of words divided by how much time it takes on average for humans to read a word. So you could use advanced custom fields, for example. This is not the one that we're going after. Here I actually already created it. Read time, add in some reading time. So for example, this is going to be Nelson Mandela is, if it takes 6 minutes, 6-minute read. If it's going to take someone 6 minutes to read this article, you could, instead of having a view more call to action, you could have some text underneath this divider. Let's make it 16 Let's make it all caps. And let's make this pull in data from our custom fields. And this is going to be reading time. And this will automatically pull in how long it's going to take someone to read that article. Now, you have to make sure you remember to fill in that custom field towards the bottom of your post. If you don't fill it in, then it's just gonna show up blank. Perfect. So that may come in handy, actually. Really cool stuff. And we just want to make sure that this is maybe not 16, maybe like 14 or even 12, 6-minute time. And not just that. So this is not only going to pull in the, how long it's going to take someone to read this article, but this is also going to link. We want to make sure that this links to the post content post link. Insert. So this is not just pulling in how long it's going to take someone to read the article, but it's if someone clicks on the reading time, it links to the article itself. Super really cool. Super really cool. I just made up that expression. Super really cool. Great. So we have a hero section created, more or less, right? Now, let's just try to work on this right-hand column a little bit more. So what are we going to do? So the New York Times is just, again, essentially just pulling in some more content. Maybe if we wanted to create this divider, look, there's a couple ways of doing it. There's the easy way and the more difficult way. The easy way is to simply come into this column and inside borders, just give the right-hand border 1 pixel. And hopefully that doesn't actually add a border. It did add a border, right? To all of my borders, which I don't want. Let's bring this to 0. And let's make this 1. Perfect. And this already adds a little bit of border to our column. Now, if we're going to do it like this, we will need a little bit of right padding as well so that the content of our column isn't touching the actual border. So I don't know, maybe like 10 pixels. That's better. And now we have this border that runs all the way down through this column. And it kind of creates that effect of having a divider, right? So that's the easy way of doing it. On mobile, you can always just turn this off, by the way. I'm thinking that it may be a little bit too black, so let's just make this 30. Oops, cancel not the top one, but the bottom one. Excellent. Yeah, that's much better. Great. There's a more difficult way of doing it, which is adding in another column, making it super thin, and sticking in a divider. But it would have to be like an image of a shape, probably like a vector, and have that be your divider. But I find that to be a little bit more difficult, and it's going to make things a whole lot more complicated to make mobile responsive. I would just recommend you stick to using this trick or cheat or however you want to call it. All right, let's just continue to work on the right-hand column. This is going to be more posts, more content. Now, here's how I would probably do this. We can take the same approach, let's try to do this. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but let's clone this post list. And this is going to duplicate not just the post list, but the feature content on top. And let's drag and drop it onto our right-hand column. And let's see what happens. Okay. It's not too bad. It's not too bad, is it? This gets us somewhere close to this, right? This is what we're going after. The problem is that our image is on the right-hand side, which we don't want. I'm thinking that we might as well just replace the template that we're using for this featured list. And let's pick one where the image is sitting on top. If there is one, how about we use this one? See what that looks like. Okay. All right, that's not too bad. All right, so let's just get rid of this floating button. Let's get rid of this floating button on our feature list. We don't need this floating button. And let's try to get that image centered inside the column. All right, let's get rid of that. Content box. Let's take a look at this content box. Let's see what's happening. Actually, we probably, for the sake of this, we probably don't need our image to be inside a content box here. Now, the only reason why sometimes Thrive Architect uses images in the format of content boxes by applying a background image to the content box is because you get more flexibility in terms of how you use that content box, visually speaking. Like, you get to decide if you want to crop it in a certain way, or how wide you want the content box to be, or if you want to put an absolute positioning value to that content box. There's more ways to do more things with content boxes than images. But for the sake of doing this, we can probably just drag in the featured image for this post on top of this title, and boom, be done with it. That would probably take care of this. Now, if we take a look at the New York Times, they are having the custom post excerpt again inserted here. So let's do that. Let's do post content, and let's do excerpt. Let's make it 16. Wow, the post excerpt was already there. Great, genius, Tony. And here, let me just make sure. I'm not sure if this is my mistake. I'm not really sure why there's this little space. I may have just inserted that myself. Great. I'm liking this. This is looking pretty solid. Now, again, how do we tell WordPress, okay, which blog posts are going to be showing up on the right-hand column, right at the very top? This is still kind of a very hero section type of placement, right? I mean, upon loading the New York Times, yes, people are probably going to first concentrate on this post, but they are 100% sure going to see this one as well. So I want to make sure I have, control over which blog post gets placed here. And that's just, again, simple as using tags. Let me go back into the backend of WordPress and show you how I did this. I have a blog post. Is the, actually, let me see. Yeah, is the US Women's Soccer Team built for history this summer? And by default, since I haven't applied any filters, WordPress is just presenting the most recent blog post that has ever been published. The blog post that has been recently published on my website. But I want to make sure that this one, front right, gets displayed there. I created this tag. It's called front right. And I know, in my mind, okay, this section here, whatever post or the most recent post tagged as front is always going to show up here. And I know this by heart, okay? I'm the director of the New York Times, and I know that if I want to quickly switch which post gets presented here, I just need to go to the most recent one and tag it as as front. And for this one, I just need to tag it as front right. So let's go into filters. And here, let's add a rule. Hey, WordPress, make sure that you only show content tagged as front right here. And this should be my US Women's Soccer Team built for history this summer post. Great. It doesn't look like I have a custom post excerpt written for this one, so it's going to show up as blank. Let's just make sure that here we have, let's get rid of this margin. This is looking pretty solid. Pretty solid. I'm wondering what would it look like if we were to actually insert, let's do that. I think the New York Times, if I'm not mistaken, they're using featured images here. Let's go ahead and insert the images there as well. Post list, edit design. We have 2 columns, and we want to make sure that we do insert the featured image. We may want a little bit of bottom margin. Hey, but it's looking pretty sweet. And so forth and so on. Guys, I don't want to be here for longer than we have already. It's been a pretty intense video, but this is essentially how you would build the New York Times. I mean, we can continue to expand on this page as much as we want. Create more sections. Probably, I mean, at some point we will want to break sections apart. You see how the New York Times oftentimes just introduces either advertisement banners to break up the page a little bit so that it's not so much just, lists of content thrown at your face. That's something that we can definitely do. And that is essentially something that we can eventually do, right? We have our 2-column layout, and we can continue to, again, expand on the list of content pieces that we have here. We could just simply duplicate these. We may want to, switch up the layout. Maybe for this post list, we don't need a featured content. We just want more content pieces. We can quickly switch templates, come up with new layouts, variations. That's kind of really easy, and just continue to add in more and more content. Something I want to show you how to do though is I'm noticing that I may want a little bit of more breathing room between the right-hand column and the left-hand column. And that's as simple as just coming into my columns and adding in a little bit of more gutter width. Let's do 60. Now remember, we've added in a divider in the form of a right border. So if we are going to increase the distance between our left column and our right column, we need to make sure that we also increase the internal padding between our border and the content inside the left-hand column. So let's make sure we do that. Our border is here. We've got 1 pixel. That's right. And now we just want to make sure that if we increased the distance, the gutter width by 45, that means that we need to increase this by 45 as well, which would leave us at 55 pixels of internal padding. And boom. Now we have more or less the same distance, right? Between the divider and the left-hand column and the divider and the right-hand column, more or less. Let me hit save and preview what this looks like. All right, so this is what this is looking like so far. Right now, dynamically speaking, we're populating in pretty much everything with the exception of this part, which we would be manually updating ourselves. If you're the director of the New York Times, we would need to find that, markets plugin that I was talking about, that financial markets plugin. There's a gazillion of them. There shouldn't be any issues. Or you could use that space for something else. But other than that, we may want to get rid of that drop shadow again. We can take this as far as we want. And well, it's doable. It may take us a little bit of time to get through, but hopefully you've seen how just by using Thrive Architect and WordPress, we've been able to dynamically populate in most of the things that make up the New York Times front cover. And we've done so by ourselves. I think we can be proud of our work. Now, I know that there will be some questions because this has been a pretty challenging video. I mean, we've done some pretty advanced stuff. I'm going to be answering all of them down in the comment section below. Now, if you still don't have your license for the best visual page builder on WordPress, Thrive Architect, you can grab it by clicking in the link in the description box down below. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.